Going to look at numbers and number formats. This is something that you will be tested on from grade 10 all the way through grade 12. However, we need to make sure that we lay the basic foundations in grade 10. So let's have a look. First of all, in terms of number formats, you should be able to work with numbers expressed in the following formats: as whole numbers, as fractions, as decimals, and then also in percentages. So that means we also need to be able to convert between these different formats. Now, if we start looking at more number formats, you also need to know the difference between the decimal comma and the decimal point. You also need to know how the thousands separator works. We also need to know about positive and negative numbers as directional indicators, and how numbers can be expressed in word format and how we can use that. So let's have a look. First of all, when we start looking at different number formats, here's a few pictures on this slide. First, in the top left, you'll see that we have apartment numbers. So if we look at 307 here at the top, it doesn't mean that there's 307 apartments in this block. It means it's apartment 7 on the third floor. If we look at something like this cricket player here, you'll see here it says this over, and remember in cricket an over consists of 6 balls that are bowled. If we look at the left bottom corner, you can see laps to go. So that's in athletics. If it's a lap to go, it means it's 400 meters that you are still supposed to run. If we look at something like the temperature, here you'll see some of the temperatures are positive, some of them are negative. Then you can see the -6 says it's biting winds, and -2 says not as cold. So there's obviously a difference between negative values as well. Here you can see someone who won the lotto, and here you actually see the thousand separator, because it's not a jackpot prize of 15 rand, it's actually 15,100,403 rands. And then you also see someone's bank balance. There's a negative amount there, so it means that they probably are in overdraft or they've spent more money than what they have. So first have a look at how to convert between the normal number formats. Then you can see how to convert fractions to decimals. So if I have 4/8 as a fraction, then on your calculator you say 4 divide 8, and that gives you 0,5. If we look at another example, 5/7 will be 5 divided by 7, which is 0,714, blah, blah, blah. Now, what you need to remember is you can't just always assume that you can round off to 1 or 2 decimal places. You'll have to round off to the appropriate context according to what the question is asking. So in this case, I wrote all of the decimal places in. Now, how to convert to percentages. So what we can do is we can take fractions or decimals and we can now convert them to percentages. And that is, we take the fraction, let's say 6/8, to a percentage. So then we say 6 divided by 8 times 100, which is 75%. Or if you have a scientific calculator, you can type in the fraction times 100, and that also gives you the same answer. When we convert decimals to percentages, let's say 0,62 into a percentage, you take 0,62 times 100, giving you 62%. Or if we have 0,03 as a decimal, you take that times 100, and that gives us 3%. Now, when we get to the different formats that we can use, if we have a decimal comma and a decimal point, you can see that we have 0,1 and 0.1. So in South Africa, we use the decimal comma, so we will say 0,1. In America, for instance, they use the decimal point, which is 0,1. Now, when we look at these, they are actually equivalent, but they are written differently. And you need to also remember that your calculator uses the decimal point. So you'll see you'll get an answer of maybe 5.6, but when you write your answer, you need to write 5,6. Now, here's just an example. On the left, you have examples of milk that can be bought in America. Here you can see $6.73 for this milk. And here's one from South Africa where you can see it's 98 rands and 99 cents. So you can see that it's written differently but it means the same thing. So when we look at thousand separator, we need to remember that it makes it easier for us to read the values, that it's normally indicated by a space. So if we look at an example like 4,000, we know as a value it will be 4,000, but with the thousand separator, it's 4 space 000. Some countries will use an apostrophe, so 4 and then the 000, or some countries use a comma, 4, 000. So if we have a look at the example of this check on this side, it's $41,956 and then 79 cents. So please make sure that we remember that here they used a comma as a thousand separator and a full stop to indicate decimals. Now, for example, if we write 10,000, it's going to be 10,000. If we write 100,000, it's going to be 100,000. And you can see it's a lot easier to read when we put the thousand separator in. If we write a million, it's 1 and 6 zeros. And then you can see where the spaces go. So what you should notice is that there's normally a space after every 3 values, and that's why it's called a thousand separator. So therefore the space is placed after every 1,000. Here is just a reminder of how we work with this, and here you can see where all the thousand separators go. If we start looking at negative values as indicators, and we have a look at temperature and banking, for instance. If we look at these temperatures and we have negative 37,8 degrees, then we need to remember that it means it's 37,8 degrees below the freezing point, and freezing point would be 0 degrees Celsius. If we look at banking, we need to remember that in terms of your banking, if you have credit, your balance will increase, and if you have a debit, your balance will decrease. So when we have a debit, if we look at something like this, the 1273,25, it can also be written as 1273,25 with a negative sign in front, or on this side with a negative sign at the back, or it can be written in a bracket. So this again will use negative values. When we start working with larger numbers like millions and billions, it's also important for us to remember that a million is 10 to the power of 6, which is a 1 with 6 zeros, and a billion is 10 to the power of 9, which is a 1 and 9 zeros. So sometimes in a test or an exam, you will be asked to write a number in words, and then a table like this could help you. So what you'll see here is it goes from ones to tens to hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, and so on. So what we do is we can redraw this table to answer the question. So if we look at something like this, write the following number in a word format, and then the number is 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. Then we start from the right-hand side by the ones, and we write the number in the table, which means there's 4 10,000s, so that's 40,000, and then this is another 5,000. So this is 45,789, and then if we look at our answer, 45,789. Look at another example. So write the following number in a word format. Then we have a bigger number, so we still write it in from the right-hand side, and that gives us 1,100,000. There's no 10,000s, no thousands, 564. When we express numbers in word format, in this case, a bigger number, we get something like 17,905,678 using the same. So when we get an even bigger number and we write it in from right to left and we look at something like this, we get a total of 4,580,500,430. What we also need to remember is that the numbers can be expressed in different formats. So if we have a look at something like this, 47 billion means 47 with 9 zeros. Remember, a billion has 9 zeros. And there it says 1M. So 1M is 1 million, which is a 1 and 6 zeros. If we look at something like this, when the information is given, in this case, in thousands. So if we have a look at Sweden, which we can find over here, it's 1,480, but that actually means 1,480 times 1,000, which gives us 1,480,000 subscribers. If they give you something like this, remember we can use a comma as a thousand separator, so it's going to be quite difficult to think that the population of Southern Africa is 67,554 people. So therefore, they use a comma, so therefore the actual population is 67,554,804. If we have something like this, you'll see a summary of learners' favorite chocolates for grade 8, 9, and 10, and then the number of learners in each grade. So what you'll see here is that this one is in tens and this one is in hundreds. So how many learners in grade 9 indicated they prefer a Kit Kat? So grade 9, Kit Kat is 9, but it's not 9 learners because it's in tens. So it's 9 times 10, which is 90 learners. How many learners in grade 10 indicated that they preferred a text? So text for grade 10, 3,5 times 10 gives you 30. So now when we start using this information, if we have a look at this, how many learners are in grade 8, we can see that the number of learners in a grade is in hundreds. So grade 8 will be 1,8 times 100, which is 180 learners. And now if I ask something like, what percentage of all the grade 9s preferred a Kit Kat? We will take the 9 learners times 10 because it's in tens. And then we take the 2,3 times 100, and that gives me 230 learners in the grade. So therefore it will be 90 of the 230 learners. Multiply with 100 because that's how we calculate a percentage, and that gives us 39,13%. Now, I've also added some questions from the NSC papers that were done in November 2018. So question 2.3 gives you another example where we are using billions, and then they ask you questions. And then also question 5 is going to ask you questions about millions, thousand, millions, thousands, and millions. So if you can have a look at those questions, it might help you to answer the questions.